Unsurprisingly, the oldest gaming franchise is also one of the most influential. The Oregon Trail dates back to 1971, has sold over 65 million copies since its creation, and has been a stable presence in every generation of gamer. The series follows a family traveling by a wagon across the United States to Oregon in the mid-1800s, but most people remember the death and disease that occurs along the journey. I always got a kick out of messing up a river crossing. The game lists out the things that you lose: some wagon parts, some food, some bullets, and Bob. Not only that, playing this game as a kid taught me that the percentage of American pioneers with dysentery was roughly 87,000%. Between the Oregon Trail and Blink-182's Dysentery Gary, I was strangely familiar with this disease at a young age. Despite this morbidity, Visit Oregon even has it playable on their website. Come to Oregon, you'll shit yourself and die? Whose idea was this? Anyway, it was so popular that in the mid-90s, the Minnesota Educational Computing Consortium, the developer since 1974, generated 1/3 of its income from sales of the Oregon Trail. Fairly realizing that that can't last forever, they decided to try capitalizing on the Oregon Trail's success by making spin-off games. While difficult gameplay mechanics and teaching educational facts were consistent across all games, the plots would vary. 1994's Yukon Trail was very similar, just involving the 1897 Klondike Gold Rush instead. A little further from that baseline was 1995's Africa Trail, following a modern-day bicycle team crossing Africa. But 1993 not only bought the first spin-off, but the weirdest. My name is Harvey Bodega, and welcome to the Amazon Trail. Now, I wouldn't blame you for assuming this game simply follows a team crossing the Amazon jungle, but you would be wrong. You play someone from Peru, Indiana, who gets kidnapped by the Incan king's time-traveling black jaguar because, apparently, you're the only person who can save the Incan people from malaria. Don't worry, it's still a dysentery extravaganza, the true common denominator for all trail games, but you can tell that the premise is a little bit different. Don't worry, we'll come back to the story and you'll see how Henry Ford and Theodore Roosevelt fit in. Yeah. I want to quickly explain the version I'm playing, as the original Amazon Trail came out on DOS in 1993, but had a Windows release in 94 and an updated Windows and Mac release in 96. 1996 also brought the Amazon Trail 2, which was basically a remake, which would then be remastered in 1998 as the Amazon Trail 3rd Edition. By far the best version of this game is the original's Windows release. Why not Amazon Trail 2 or the 3rd Edition? Well, it's just...
I will not tell you that.
Some liberties were taken, some FMV was added, and I think it was to the game's detriment. Is this okay? Can they do that? They also slightly toned down the weirdness of the plot, changing it from like a Goosebumps premise to, I don't know, the Magic School Bus or something, and I want you to experience it in all of its glory. I, however, will be playing the original DOS version, as it's the most well-known and the easiest to find and play. You can just go to the internet and do a quick search to play it in a browser. That being said, if you're an emulator type of person, definitely play the Windows release. I'll do comparisons where it's relevant, and that'll crop up in the presentation. So let's go ahead and start with that. As for visuals, it's hard not to be biased here. I mean, compared to its 1993 contemporaries in Doom, Ridge Racer, or Day of the Tentacle, yeah, it doesn't compete. But aiming as far as realism with basically pixel art, I think they did a damn good job, and I like the old school aesthetic. On the other hand, it has a lot of imperfections. For instance, in certain scenes with animations, there will be a halo around the moving parts which doesn't match the background. A lot of objects are very difficult to tell what they even are, like the blue mist, which I'll get into later, which sort of looks like the spray paint tool on Microsoft Paint. DOS visual presentation is either something you'll like or not, but either way it does present frustrations in the gameplay. I'll circle back to that in that section. On the audio side, I'll admit I was very pleasantly surprised upon revisiting this game. I originally played Amazon Trail in the late 90s, but didn't remember how solid the music was. Now it's stylized and very simplistic, but the tracks are surprisingly catchy. As for environmental sounds, they're mostly just serviceable, although I will complain about the noise of the camera, it's pretty weak. So the 1993 DOS version of the Amazon Trail is rather dated and doesn't have anything spectacular, but has some charm, especially in the music. That brings me to the Windows version, which fixes almost every shortcoming. Wondering what those random brown smears were in the water? Wow, they were copy bars. I thought that was a nothing? Huh. It looks much better, I'll make that clear, but not only that, the solid audio now has voice acting.
Here's an update on our situation.
We have passed through a blue mist.
Antonio is a good choice. Good luck, you'll need it.
It's stilted, but it exists. So if the highly dated presentation of the DOS version bothers you and you're an emulator sort of individual, the Windows version goes above and beyond. Alright, into the gameplay. As you've seen by now, you know this isn't a wagon trip across the frontier, but canoeing down the Amazon River. The gameplay is broken up into 4 main aspects: steering your canoe, fishing, photography, and interacting at settlements, with optional decisions on pace, rations, and directions. This is almost a direct mirror to the Oregon Trail with fishing instead of hunting and the addition of photography, but it feels really distinct, especially the canoeing. Canoeing may make this game sound like a river cruise, but if it is, it's one of those budget cruises where you get food poisoning and die. How to steer your canoe is so simple it's almost boring. Just direct your mouse to the left, right, or middle to dodge hazards floating in the water, but making a mistake has the potential for such a high consequence that it's tense and stressful. For those who have played Oregon Trail and failed a river crossing and lost that list of items or people, it's like that all the time. Hit a log, you could lose nothing. Be attacked by a fish and lose health, lose a few supplies, lose half your supplies, lose all your supplies, or just die. This is where the DOS version has the biggest downside, as it's much more difficult to see and track whirlpools, boats, and logs in the water. This does make the Windows version easier, but it's still pretty hard. Fun fact, I didn't know it's actually impossible to run into the islands or land until I was an adult because I was so afraid of capsizing or crashing. Thankfully, at least from the land, you auto-steer away. Now, as you avoid this game's main antagonist, logs, you can at any time talk to your guide to change the pace, check your supplies, change your rations, check the map, or pull off into the jungle to take some pictures of animals and plants for your journal. Basically, you change your view throughout a jungle segment, which is a little disorienting, and try to snap pictures of hidden wildlife. Then you identify the animals, which is mostly super easy, but if you mess up, you have to rephotograph it and try it again. 95% of what you see will just be plants, some of which you can photograph, but only very few and you don't know which ones. Also, the pixelated graphics makes knowing what you're photographing impossible. I just turn it into a click fest until something pops up. So the photography aspect is weird and not very fun, but there are 2 silver linings. First, it's completely unnecessary. Identifying all the wildlife, fish, and fauna is just for completionists. You don't need it. The other silver lining is that this is entirely better in the Windows version, as the photography sections are more captivating, interesting, and fun when you know what you're looking at. Alright, so you stop every once in a while to take some pictures, but let's get back to the river and our enemy, logs. But we do have another enemy, hunger. In the Oregon Trail, you could always play a very frustrating hunting minigame for some extra food, and in Amazon Trail, you can fish. It's solid. You try to harpoon shapes in the water for food. If you keep dangerous fish, they can hurt you, like stingrays or electric eels, but piranhas are fine. Others you keep for a surprising amount of food. Just don't hit the slow-moving, long, symmetrical ones. It's our old enemy, the log, which will break your harpoon and you can't eat it. This minigame is hugely important for survival, but I will say fish going diagonally are strangely misleading and harder to hit. Not really sure why that is. So if you aren't canoeing, photographizing, or fishing, like the Oregon Trail, you come to stopping points along the journey where you can talk to locals, trade, and learn. This is where you can learn there are over 250 types of dysentery, how you'll probably get all of them, and speak to Henry Ford, Teddy Roosevelt, and some other famous people from history. We'll get to why shortly, but the gameplay here is asking where you are, when it is, bantering about the rainforest or whatever, and trading. Trading is more difficult than the Oregon Trail. You can only barter for a small selection of items. If you've lost almost everything, people may not have what you need or may not want what you're offering. Need a harpoon to fish? Sorry, this person only has... Ugh. What makes this worse is that speaking to townspeople and trading is additionally misleading. It's easy to assume each town only has 1 person with 3 items to trade for, but no. Each has 2 people with 4 items each, the 4th item becoming visible when you trade with the same person a second time in a row. There's no way to really know that without trial and error, and I was really grumpy when I realized that for the first time, and again playing this game 25 years later. Overall, the gameplay is simple but has enough variety to be interesting, and with the fishing and photography being optional, you can take breaks from the log dodging as often as you want. Tying all this together is the story, which I didn't remember at all. In fact, I asked my siblings who also played this game. We remembered the awesome setting, capsizing, and of course dysentery, but nothing about the actual plot. We'll likely see as to why shortly. As outlined in this video's opening, you're some random person living in Peru, Indiana, which is a real place by the way, kind of like Kokomo, Indiana. You get time-napped by the Incan King's time-traveling black jaguar, who tells you that you're the only person in time and space who can save the past Incan Empire from malaria and teleports you to Belém, Brazil. Why did he not just teleport you directly to your destination of Vilcabamba, Peru? Well, because first you have to find cinchona, a plant actually used to treat malaria as its bark contains quinine. You'll need to canoe the entire Amazon River to find some. So fair enough, we don't get teleported right where we need to go, but do we still have to go through customs? Really? Anyway, after handing over our papers, which check out, did the Jaguar fill out a visa for us? We have to pick a guide. Isabel or Antonio. Now whatever you pay your guide is not going to be enough, because they will be joining you through all previously mentioned dangers and time to reach Vilcabamba. Set off on your journey, dodge logs, and you'll quickly come across the blue mist, which travels you in time with each appearance, and the black jaguar will appear to say something cryptic or just remind you of your task. Upon arriving at a settlement, the people you speak with will answer the completely normal question, when is it? And this is when you can run into Henry Ford. He's apparently there at his Fordlandia settlement, which is an incredibly weird story I suggest you Google, although I believe he just funded the settlement and never actually went to visit. Teddy Roosevelt is there at another time, finding whatever large animals he can hunt, but at least you can trade with him for an iguana? You speak to a variety of botanists, zoologists, and native people as well, and eventually find someone with cinchona to trade. Boom. Got it. Now I don't have to have the jaguar gripe at me. This is a good time to mention why you can photograph so many things, and what happens when you win. The more Incan King requests you fulfill, the more animals, fish, and flora you fill your journal with, determines your score when you arrive at Vilcabamba at the end, as long as you have the cinchona. If you don't care about your score and just want to finish, this can be a canoeing simulator. I think that's why I don't remember anything about the story. It's so weird, and the weaker elements of gameplay are those more closely tied with the story, so I mainly remember the Amazon Trail being a difficult river trip. It's totally fine to view this game that way, but it's strange to have such a bizarre plot be so immemorable. But now I'm an adult. The implications and potential symbolism of this story hit me more severely. A normal person snatched from their bed, forced on a dangerous journey is dark in and of itself, but see what happens when you run out of health. Your journey ends and immediately launches back into the opening cutscene where you get time-napped again. Existing outside of the confines of time and death, your character must continually repeat this treacherous task, locked into an eternal loop of trial, error, death, disease, and failure. A fate like Sisyphus, or perhaps judgment in purgatory. Is the beginning showing your death and everything that follows within a spiritual plane or afterlife? Is the Incan King representing God? The jaguar, an angel overseeing your tribulations? Is your guide of choice like Virgil from the Divine Comedy or a psychopomp guiding you to eternal rest? Upon completion, are your points an indication of whether or not you deserve paradise or damnation? Perhaps we'll never know. Implications aside, overall, the Amazon Trail is a fun, challenging adaptation of the Oregon Trail classic with an engaging difficulty and some obvious shortcomings. It sold over 1 million units at the time and reviewed well, but doesn't have the same legacy as its predecessor. If any of this was interesting to you, it's free and easy to find online, so give it a try, especially if you can emulate the Windows version. But I wouldn't blame you if the presentation is a little too dated, the gameplay a little too unforgiving, and the premise not quite engaging enough to capture your attention. That being said, I believe anyone who likes challenging games should reach Vilcabamba at least once in their life. Thank you so much for watching. My name is Harvey Bodega. See you later, my friends. Thanks a lot.